Welcome to the Rock Interview Series with host Thomas S. Orwatt Jr.
Welcome to episode number 53 of the Rock Interview Series. I'm Thomas Orwatt Jr. It is June 16th, 2022, and for this feature I have John Payne, vocalist, bass player, songwriter of the prog-rock band Asia, featuring John Payne as my guest. John Payne joined the multi-platinum band Asia in 1992 after original member John Wetton left the band. Payne was in Asia for the next 14 years and during that time recorded 8 amazing records with the band. In 2007, shortly after Asia reunited with the original members, Payne was given the right to continue under the name Asia featuring John Payne. Asia featuring John Payne is currently on the double anniversary tour to commemorate the original band's 1982 debut record and Payne's first record with Asia, the 1992 Aqua record. What follows is an exclusive interview with John Payne in which he discusses his upcoming tour dates, past history, and his plans for the future. Hey everybody, welcome to the Rock Interview Series, and today our special guest is John Payne from Asia featuring John Payne. John, how are you doing today?
I'm very good. I always cringe when I have my name said after the name of the band, but unfortunately that was just one of the things that had to happen when the two parted ways. So it's kind of weird. Sometimes I have to do interviews and say, "Hi, I'm John Payne from Asia featuring John Payne," which sounds very contrived and very kind of big-headed, but you know, I'm out in the wilds of Maine at the moment and just looking forward to doing this busy summer, which is going to be fantastic.
This summer, you will be going out on tour doing a double anniversary tour in which you will be featuring 2 classic Asia releases. The first one would be the first Asia record, which was released 40 years ago, and then Aqua, which was released in 1992. Which was the first record you did with Asia. How excited are you to go out on the road and start playing songs from these records?
Really, you know, there's stuff like One Step Closer and a lot of, you know, 3 or 4 tracks off the first album that I've never even done before. And then there's stuff from Aqua that I've not played for 30 years. So it's really exciting. And I'm just going through pre-productions here in Maine at the moment and at a remote location, and it's just bringing back huge memories of recording in 1992 and also in 92 being one of the first times I'd played the classics like Only Time Will Tell and Heat of the Moment.
Yeah, that record Aqua I thought was pretty amazing. Give us a little back history of that record. You came in, you were recruited by Asia to replace John Wetton, who had left the band. And tell us how you got involved with Asia at that point.
So it was actually quite funny. My friend Phil Spalding was working with Steve Hackett and Steve Howe and Jonathan Mover and Max Bacon with a band called GTR. And they were performing at the Townhouse in London, and Phil asked me down and said, "Come and have a listen, it's going really well." And I went to the studio. In fact, that was the first time I met Freddie Mercury, because they were recording Innuendo in the studio next door. And then I was in the control room and I met Jeff and we talked, and he said, I've got a gig. And I said, "Come down." So he came to one of my gigs. We ended up starting working on a little project called Rain, which never really went to anywhere, but it had some of the songs like Who Will Stop the Rain that we were working on. So when Jeff had finished producing GTR, he gave me a call and said, "Can you meet me at No Miss Rehearsal Studios in London?" And then I got asked to join the band, which was quite a surprise. And I had to actually think about it because I was working with ELO and ELO Part 2 and Jim Steinman at the time. And I thought long and hard and went, no, Asia's my route to go. And then we spent a long time working on the songs, writing, honing them, and recording them at residential recording studios where, you live and breathe it day and night.
Yeah, you were responsible for co-writing 6 of the songs there, and there were 2 guitar players featured on the record. Steve Howe and Al Pitrelli were the 2 guitarists. I've often wondered, how much did Steve Howe actually contribute to that record?
So Steve, we knew, would work with us for a while, and he's popped his head in and out Asia, on a few albums. And I kind of brought a kind of heavier edge to it, and I wanted a rock guitarist as well, in the form of Al Pitrelli. And Steve actually did quite a lot of stuff on that. Carl's input was probably a little bit smaller, because we used Michael Sturgis, Simon Phillips on drums, and Nigel Glockler from Saxon. But Steve did quite a few bits and pieces. He came in, he played a lot in Who Will Stop the Rain, and Aqua Part 1, and Far Cry. So Steve, was on probably between a half and a third of the album. But the majority of the guitar was played by Al Pitrelli. Another fellow joined in a bit called Ant Glynn, and then I did some of the guitars on it as well, because I come from a guitarist background. But it was a real love of digging deep, and giving 120% of our souls to make that record work.
Yeah, it really was a great and very underrated record. But the time was kind of weird. It was 1992. The music scene had really changed. That's when grunge took over.
Grunge in Seattle, and the record company also gave us, paid a lot of money for that record in the recording process, because we took a long time and had some great engineers and producers involved, and by the time we were finished, from start to finish, it was probably, from the songwriting, it was a year's work, and grunge had really grabbed a hold, and also the record company had run out of money, so there was no video for Who'll Stop the Rain, even though it's played a lot on the radio, and we kind of struggled with tour support and all that kind of stuff in those days. We didn't have the machine that Asia had when they first signed to Geffen, and really, went to radio and really went to town after the recording of the album. And I think it was several things. The time and the finances at the back end of that album were not in our favor.
Yeah, I can't remember. Was there an actual tour of the U.S. for that record?
Yes, there was. Yeah, Steve Howe came with us, and as did Al Pitrelli.
Wow.
They both came. Actually, no, Al didn't come on that tour. Al came on a later tour. Al came on the RO tour. We had a guitarist called Vinnie Burns. It was Vinnie Burns and Steve Howe in the US.
Wow. Was it at all a little discouraging to you at the time, with you putting so much effort into that and the record sounding so amazing, that it didn't get a better reaction commercially?
I think any artist, whether you're a painter or a writer or whatever, the way really to do it is just to do it for yourself. It sounds selfish, but people want to listen to you being selfish rather than following a bandwagon or whatever. And once the record is done, then I kind of let go, and I'll do the promotion and the touring, but the what happens to it is not really of the most importance to me. The actual sales, there've been terrible records that have sold in their millions, and there's been brilliant records that have just disappeared, and that doesn't stop the artist still bearing their soul musically. It's like very few people stop painting because they haven't sold a lot of paintings. Vincent van Gogh in particular.
What was your very first show like with Asia for you?
Um, Nowadays I very rarely suffer from nerves unless I'm sick or I'm unprepared, or it's a really small audience, or it's just me. But I was filling some huge shoes. It's like Brian Johnson always says, he was the new guy in AC/DC, and there's still people go, "Oh, Bon Scott, not Brian Johnson," and stuff like that. It's crazy, and that as a vocalist coming into it, that you're in for a beating, because you can never be that person. I was never intended to be a clone of John's, which was really nice from Jeff's point of view. He let me be myself. But yeah, it was daunting. Really, we did a couple of kind of practice dates, and I think the first place we went to was Japan, and in Tokyo, and we had a sellout tour of Japan, which was pretty amazing. And I was a bit concerned at the beginning of her rehearsals that we went into a place in the UK where Genesis used to rehearse, a big farm that had a rehearsal studio. And I was like, halfway through the rehearsals, I was saying, Jeff, I don't know if I can do this. This is so hard, doing all the syncopated drum and bass stuff and singing, in a different time or whatever. But 3/4 of the way through rehearsals, kind of muscle memory stuck in, and it was like I'd climbed the mountain, and it wasn't as daunting as before. But still, that I knew I was following in a legend in John Wetton, and in a legendary band. So it wasn't easy, and it's never been easy. It's not meant to be easy.
Yeah, did you find that it was it was difficult to win the fans over at first, or?
Yeah, I think a good percentage of the audience were behind me, and I always heard this funny Americanism as I came off stage. People would say, "Good job, good job." I never heard that said as regards music, but I've had my fair share of haters, and I've never considered music a competition. Music's just your freedom of speech, and there are people you can't convince, and people love you and people hate you. So, and also people indifferent. But yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about the current version of Asia featuring John Payne. Can you briefly tell us who is currently in the band that you're going to be touring with this summer?
Yeah, so we've been working a lot of the time, with my lineup. I said to somebody the other day, I still was a member of original Asia and did 8 albums with the band, but I was not a founding member. I think, there's a big difference. The founding members obviously did the 1982 huge album, which was Steve Howe, Carl Palmer, John Wetton, and Jeff Downes. I've had various lineups, different guitarists come along. Pat Thrall did some stuff back in the band again, Elliot Randall, and the amazing Guthrie Govan. But now, for the last few years, and even working together through COVID, we have Johnny Fedovich on drums, who also does all the this tour, but he also does the stuff I do with other people, like Asia, featuring my good self, has various versions of artists joining us. So we have like Lou Gramm, we have Steve O'Jerry, Bobby Kimball, John Elefanti, all guys from all different classic rock bands. But this lineup has Johnny Fedovich on drums and vocals, Alex Garcia on guitar and vocals, whilst Alex is an amazing player. He also plays with this person that I'd never heard of, that I do now know of because he's the fastest selling artist of all time, touring wise, is Bad Bunny, which is so different from what we're doing. And then we have Jonathan Gilchrist, who plays pretty much everything. Keyboards, he's a great singer, violin, flute, saxophone, bass, guitar, trombone, trumpet, pretty much everything this guy plays. So we've gone back. We were a 5-piece at one stage. We've gone back to being a 4-piece, and which I think holds the band's tradition together.
Yeah. I saw you perform live a couple years ago at Batavia Downs, and I was like very impressed with your performance there. The band was on fire. And then I did a deep dive into some of your material that I wasn't familiar with. And I'm telling you, on every single one of your records, there are some real gems on those, and you deserve a lot of credit, much more than you get for
Thank you.
the material
Thank
you've
you.
put out over the years. You're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, songwriting is really important to me, and it doesn't matter how good a player you are, how accomplished, that there has to be a song. And that's one thing I thought, bands like Genesis and Yes had in the prog market, that they had songs, and great melodies. And I think Asia's always been about that with a pop sensibility. And I try to continue that with, Arena, Aqua, Aria, those Aura, those albums. I really wanted to have strong songs. And we probably write 100 songs to find 10. And then really hone them down before, weeks and months of spent on the songs before even actually recording them.
Yeah, even some of your other material other than the Asia, like your project that you have, the Dukes of the Orient. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. And I wonder, have you maybe not promoted that as much because there isn't as much demand for that as there would be as a Asia featuring John Payne? I mean, I kind of feel like you're probably in a situation where, that's where the money is, that's where the audience is. So you have to really, concentrate on
and
that.
there's a bit of truth with that. That what it is, and a lot of people said, well, why doesn't, my GPS project tour? Why doesn't Dukes of the Orient tour? And frankly, we wouldn't get the dates, and we haven't gotten record company machine back in those days that would promote us. If maybe Dukes of the Orient came out, 30 years ago or more, then we'd be out touring that. But the Asia name still holds a lot, and my catalog with Asia is pretty large, and my catalog with those other bands is pretty small. I think the only thing that maybe Dukes of the Orient could do, which is basically myself and Eric Norlander, are some festivals, and I think if we got offered them, we would do them. But I don't think there's the demand, that you're not talking about a million selling band. You're talking about a band that sold in the tens of thousands and not the hundreds.
Right. Well, I think anybody who's watching this right now definitely needs to check it out. And there is some great material on both of those records. That you
Thank
did.
you. Yeah, a lot of work has gone in by Eric and my good self on those albums. So I'd go to people, just take a listen to Dukes.
I often wonder too, when John Wetton passed away and Asia reformed, was there any talk about bringing you back into the band, or was that bridge kind of burned at that point?
I think the bridge was burned. I did reach out a couple of times, and I think when John Wetton came back into the band, I was kind of more like the petulant child that was not to be mentioned. And you know, and even on this anniversary tour, I reached out to see if they'd be willing to do the double anniversary with me, but I gather that they've had several vocalists since John passed. I know my friend Billy Sherwood did a stint when they did the Journey tour, and then we've got a lot of mutual friends. The amazing Bumblefoot, who was friendly with our guitarist Guthrie Govan. They kind of both monster players, and I thought he did a good job singing some of the Asia songs. And then I do know Mark Bonilla through his work with my friend Keith Emerson, and I think they had the idea of touring with him for an anniversary tour, but I have not heard any dates happening for them. So it's almost like a coincidence that it's a double anniversary. I didn't even think of it as double anniversary. It was just going to be an anniversary of Aqua. Then went, hold on a second, it's actually 40 for Asia. I mean, I can't even believe I've been in this band, or was in the band 30 years ago. So time passes very quickly.
I kind of feel it's kind of ridiculous that you're not in there. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you did 8 studio records with Asia, and you sound great, and you're a very talented musician and songwriter.
Yeah, I'm lucky that I do practice a lot and I do sing a lot. I'm lucky that I still have the same range as I had 30 years ago. And touch wood, or please God, may it continue, because I know through friends, and your voice can just peter out as you get older. And none of us are getting younger, but this is a pretty strenuous tour, which I'm actually looking forward to, and I'm really trying to keep fit to do that. But no, I wasn't approached for any of that stuff, and I don't hold any animosity to any of the singers that they've asked. In fact, I pretty much know all of them. The prog community is very, very small, and as I heard Bumblefoot, and we've actually been in touch through social media, myself and him, and I think as a front person singer, maybe his actually abilities may be better than his running or leading the band, because as a guitarist, the guy's phenomenal. He even has a fretless guitar, and I was really impressed with what he did with the vocals and with Asia. And he works with a very good friend of mine, Jeff Scott Soto, and Jeff and he get on great.
You will be playing some shows in my area. You're going to be playing at the Riviera Theater in North Tonawanda on July 9th. And I'm really excited for that show. That's going to be great. And then a week before that, you're going to be playing in a little bit south of Buffalo called Ellicottville. And that's the show that you're doing with Lou Graham.
We're doing that one with Lou, yeah.
Yeah. So
Lou's doing great. Lou, we just did a show with Lou, and his vocals were great. He's been working out, and got a place down in the south to miss the upstate winters, and we love playing with Lou, and I love playing those songs. So basically, it's a set of hits. It's just not many deep songs, but you'll hear, Cold as Ice, Feels Like the First Time, Double Vision, Jukebox Hero, Urgent, and bunch of all the usual Asia songs. So Lou joins us halfway through, and it's over a 90-minute show of back-to-back hits.
Wow, that's going to be pretty incredible. Yeah, so we have two different shows of yours coming to, the area, the Buffalo, New York area, which is pretty exciting. Now let me make sure you have this right. For those headlining shows that you're doing, like the one that you're going to be doing at the Riviera, are you playing the entire Asia record and the entire Aqua record?
Pretty much. So it all depends on, we have to look at the contracts for each show, whether they're 90 minutes or they're going to give us a little bit of leeway to go over 90 minutes. Because I have the unfortunate addiction of speaking, and I say different things each time. So nobody knows how long the concert's going to last. But we're pretty much playing most of Aqua and I think all of Asia. So we're just looking at maybe not playing The Voice of Reason because it's just this acoustic track for a long time, and maybe not Crime with the Heart, but pretty much 90% of both albums.
Wow.
And the Asia one, we're probably I'm trying to work out whether we're going to do the set list, like intermingle them, or I think we'll do the whole of Aqua in its running order, and then the first Asia album backwards, because it starts with Heat of the Moment and Only Time Will Tell. I think that would be kind of anticlimactical to go in the running order of the album. So I think we're going to reverse the album order. So I think the first hour period will be Aqua, and then the second will be Asia.
Okay, awesome. Are there any plans to do any new recording with Asia featuring John Payne?
Yeah, we're doing an album at the moment. As soon as we finish off tour, I want to start tracking my vocals, because that's the best time to start singing is an album, is when you've just come off tour. It's kind of, you're a gig fit. So yeah, there is. We're working on the studio album now.
Wow. And
my friend Rodney Matthews is doing the album. Has actually done the album art. Very cool album art.
When do you anticipate a release for that?
I don't know. I think I'm going to be pretty busy up until October. We've still got a load of gigs coming in. It's the busiest I've been for years. So probably work over the winter on the Asia album, and it'll be out sometime next year.
A lot of the Asia records that you participated on are not available for streaming. What is the reason for that?
I know for one period that a lot of the Asia albums weren't available and weren't on sale and weren't with a record label. Jeff's management decided they wanted to rest those titles for the reason of probably because they had Asia stuff out, and also that it would actually sell more when it got re-released. So we're working on re-releasing all those albums now. And also, even though they're not, there's something I don't like about streaming. I'd almost rather that they'd be available for vinyl and perhaps a few CDs. But I know you miss out and stuff, but there certainly isn't much financial gain on streaming until the law changes. But I'd be quite happy that they just came out on vinyl.
The thing about streaming, of course, I see, both points. The musicians hardly get paid any money for it, but I think it also does kind of help people like discover these bands that maybe wouldn't have bought the record, and they listen to it.
That's very true.
Yeah,
that's very true. And also I think that there isn't as much money in selling records anymore, but there's a load more money in touring. like bands like Journey, Styx, and Kansas, and are going out earning more money than they did back in the day touring. Before, touring lost money, but supported your album. It was in support of the album. Um, I think I remember the Aqua tour that we did, and we did many, many dates. We came back, and each person in the band owed 80,000. Whereas nowadays, the ticket price are, I think, around reasonably high, but you know, some bands you go and see, and it's $200 or $300 a ticket to get a decent seat, and it's just crazy. But not those bands are not really earning any money from record sales or streaming, and it's mainly a legacy act, and that's why I know I'm in a legacy act, but it's why I want to do a new studio album under this format. I did one before, but that was while I had a Vegas residency, and it was a bunch of I wanted to do a bunch of covers, that songs that have influenced me, and that was just out on a very small label. But I think we're going to go to town on this next record.
Yeah, I like I said, I can't wait to hear it. One of the things that must be frustrating as a working musician like yourself is the fact that the last 3 years have been horrific for tour musicians. I mean, you had COVID, and then you had this World War III starting, and now you have the economy falling apart and these ridiculously high gas prices. I mean, that's got to hurt some bands out on the road there, just barely making money as it is.
And it's extended beyond that with things like, we've got Brexit. So as a UK citizen, as a UK native, I'm actually a US citizen, but in the UK, it's hard to tour in Europe now because of withholding taxes for starts. There was 2 years without touring. We came back from an 80s cruise with all the MTV bands. I think it was March the 14th. We came back to Florida, and COVID had officially got the grip. And from March till December, it was really depressing. No shows. I was like, what we were starting doing really well, and our career had, gone down the toilet. And then in December, I got COVID and was sick for 8 weeks and sleeping 14 hours a day. And then I got vaccinated. Then still no gigs, but I was writing this studio album. But even so, that the not knowing where the output would be or not doing any shows, I don't think many people use COVID time as a creative time. It was a time of stress financially for myself and all my musician friends. And I'm glad that it's opening up somewhat, but I know it's not over yet. I mean, I don't think COVID will ever go away. I think it will always be there. Just maybe the human will be, more resistant to it in the end.
Yeah, and we're gonna just have to learn to live with it, because I mean, if we don't, I mean, we can't go on. I mean, it's gonna be challenging enough with the economy the way it is now.
Yeah, and we've got the effect of Ukraine, the effect of fertilizers being blocked from Ukraine, food blocks. Porsche having their wiring looms made there, and we've got problems with chips from China, with our automotive industry. And as you're saying, in California, it's over $7 a gallon in some places. We've printed up a lot of money in this country to keep it going, but there has to be a backlash, which I'm worried about that financial fall. But at the moment, I'm just very happy to be out working.
Yeah. I want to ask your opinion on, and you're very fortunate in the fact that you still have your voice and you're still able to sing like you sang 30 years ago. But a lot, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of these vocalists from these legacy bands are really, really struggling, and some of them are even resorting to using tapes, and they mime to the tapes. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I heard about that, and that's sad. That's really sad. Um, a lot of bands have used from Queen back to ELO backing vocal tracks and stuff like that. And then living in Vegas, where I started my show, there's a whole thing where you haven't got a clue what's on track and what's live. And that's why I love bands like the Stones. What you're really hearing is really, really live. I think when you get to the point of the actual lead vocal being on a sample or on tape or on digital, it's just, that's time you should retire, because you're really it's fraudulent to get people to come and see you when you're not actually singing.
And a lot of these musicians too, I mean, it's not like they really need the money. I mean, let's be honest.
No, I know. I see that sometimes. Like, there's a singer from a really well-known band, and he's out singing, and I saw some of it, and it was just embarrassing, and his management took it down, and it's like, dude, you're a multi-millionaire. I understand you missed the buzz of it, but why can't you go and do something philanthropic with your money, or time to throw the towel and just do songwriting, or live vicariously through somebody else, but not carrying on performing. And he's not using a vocal track on track, but it's one of those vocalists that just completely lost it. And yeah, I'm lucky working with one of the people, my friend that sadly died during COVID, I think, Tony Lewis from the Outfield. His voice still phenomenal. I've worked with John Elefanti, and his voice is just as well. Mickey Thomas, I've worked with him too, and Mickey still hits that high note in Jane. It's like, yeah, sickens me.
Yeah,
you sicken me, Mickey.
Well, the Outfield was actually supposed to play a show at the place that you're going to be playing in North Tonawanda, the Riviera.
Oh, right.
And then unfortunately it had to be canceled because of his death. Yeah. Have you ever considered doing something outside of music, like writing a book or anything like that? I think it would be really interesting to hear your insights.
I am writing a book at the moment.
Oh, are you? Oh, great.
It's taking me a long time. I've also written a couple of screenplays, one for a movie and another Vegas show. I've got some ideas of other businesses that I want to do, and I really am an environmentalist. I want to travel and see the rainforest, and I'd love to work with orangutans and all that kind of stuff. And also, I'm involved with a really nice, important charity called Orphan Starfish that helps thousands of children around the world from human trafficking and abuse. I'm busy. I wish there was four of me. Time's traveling fast. I've lost so many friends recently, and especially in the prog world, from losing John Wetton to Chris Squire to Greg Lake, and now dear Alan White, who was such a nice guy and so accomplished, from playing on Imagine to owner of A Lonely Heart.
Yeah. What do you think is going to happen as these legacy bands as time goes on and there aren't any members left? Do you think that do you think they're just going to die out, or do you think there are going to be like tons of cover bands just carrying it on?
Well, what's ridiculous? I remember playing one time in the Midwest, and Jeff was going to me, there's an Asia cover band playing down the road. and they'd sold more tickets than we had. And we're finding a lot of like corporate shows that we might have done for big companies or whatever, saving money and going, well, we'll get a cover band. You know, it's definitely an era of a lot of cover bands, and you know, some of them are better than the bands are now that they're doing. Some of them are terrible, but there's a lot of good cover bands out there, and there are a lot of venues around the country that is their main bread and butter, is getting a cover band in.
Yeah, I've talked to you know, musicians in cover bands, and you know, I often ask them, don't you ever have any aspirations to do original music? And they're like, well, why should I? I mean, I right now I can play in front of like a couple thousand people with my cover band, as opposed to playing in front of like 6 people in a bar.
Yeah,
with original music.
Yeah, and some people either don't care and some people don't know. A very good friend of mine went to see an ABBA tribute band, and he thought it was ABBA. And it was only halfway through drinking with one of the members at the bar afterwards, he realized that where's your Swedish accent? What do you mean? I'm from the Midwest. But yeah, but you had a Swedish accent. He goes, no, I'm not Bjorn. I just play Bjorn.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to see a lot of that as time goes on. Well, John, I want to thank you very much for your time. Very interesting interview. Like I said, anybody watching this, you have to check out his Dukes of the Orient, all of his work with Asia. I mean, it's just absolutely fascinating, just like top quality material with top quality musicians. John, in my mind, you're a legend.
That's very kind of you. And actually, thank you for all your followers and your time to do this interview and supporting us in this way. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. And I'm looking forward to catching some of your shows coming up in the next
Yeah,
couple
come
weeks.
say hi. Come say hi when you're at the shows.
Definitely will. All right, John. Thank you very much.
Have a great evening. Bye.
You too. Bye.